Hello everyone, this is Dr. Akansha, an MBBS graduate from very prestigious King George's Medical University, Lucknow. Here, I will help you in your last 30 days strategy for NEET UG for biology. Here, I will give you topic-wise weightage. So, starting with first unit, diversity in the living world. The first chapter is the living world. We get around one question from this chapter, and the important topics are taxonomy and taxonomical aids. Second chapter is biological classification. We get 3 to 4 questions from this chapter alone, and the important topics are monera and fungi. Next chapter is plant kingdom. We get around 3 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are algae, angiosperms, bryophytes and their life cycles. Next chapter is animal kingdom. We get 3 to 4 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are arthropods, chordates. Chordates is very important. Annelida, Ctenophora and Platyhelminthes. Now, coming to second unit, structural organization in animals and plants. First chapter is morphology of flowering plants. We get 3 to 4 questions from this chapter alone, and the important topics are flower, root, families. Okay. Next chapter is anatomy of flowering plants. We usually get 3 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are tissue system. I must say this is very important and a must know topic. Secondary growth and root. Next, coming to structural organization in animals, we get around 2 questions from this unit, from this chapter, and the important topics are epithelial tissue. It is very important topic, and then cockroach. Next unit is cell structure and functions. First chapter is cell, the unit of life. We get 3 to 4 questions from this chapter alone, and the important topics are cell organelles and prokaryotic cell. Next chapter is biomolecules. We usually get 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are enzymes. It is a must know topic, guys. You should not forget reading this chapter. And next topic is carbohydrates, that comprises around 15% of the weightage from this chapter alone. Next, okay, so the next chapter is cell cycle and cell division, from which we get around 2 questions, and the important topics from this chapters, they are meiosis and cell cycle and interphase, and not to miss mitosis, just in case if you want to complete this chapter. So coming to the next unit, plant physiology. Here the chapters are transport in plants. We get 1 to 2 questions, and the important topics are stomata, transpiration and guttation, and phloem translocation. Next chapter is mineral nutrition, and we get 1 to 2 questions again, and the important topics are nitrogen fixation. It's a must know topic, guys, and mineral function. Next chapter is photosynthesis in higher plants. We usually get 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are C4 cycle, light reaction and dark reaction. They are must know topics. So next chapter is respiration in plants. We get around 1 question from this chapter, and the must know topics from this chapter. Next chapter is respiration in plants. We get around 1 question from this chapter. Next chapter is plant growth and development. Again, around 1 to 2 questions are asked from this. Now coming to next unit, human physiology. This is a very important unit, I must say. First chapter is digestion and absorption. We get around 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are gastric secretions, alimentary canal and histology of gut. Next chapter is breathing and exchange of gases. Again, around 2 questions are asked, and the important topics are respiratory system, transport of gases, and respiratory disorders, and pulmonary volumes and capacities. Next chapter is body fluids and circulation. Again, 2 questions, around 2 questions are asked, and the important topics are blood, general description and RBCs, human heart, double circulation and blood groups. Coming to the next chapter, excretory products and their elimination, roughly around 2 questions are asked from this chapter, and the important topics are autoregulation of GFR, formation of urine and nitrogenous excretory products. Coming to the next chapter, we have locomotion and movement. Around 1 to 2 questions are asked from this chapter, and the important topics are sternum and ribs and synovial joints. If in case you want to read it more, we have got disorders of muscular and skeletal system and muscle contraction, not to miss. Next chapter is neural control and coordination. We get around 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are basic anatomy of human eye, synapse, nervous system, human eye adaptation. Coming to the next chapter, we have chemical coordination and integration. We get 3 questions, roughly 3 questions alone from this chapter, and the important topics from this chapter are adrenal medulla, mechanism of hormone action, parathyroid, prolactin and posterior pituitary thyroid gland. So you should not miss these topics at least. Coming to the next unit, we have reproduction, and the chapters are reproduction in organisms. We get roughly 1 to 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics from this chapter are pre-fertilization, structures and events, and double fertilization. These were important topics from sexual reproduction in flowering plants, which gives you around 3 to 4 questions. So next chapter is human reproduction. We get 3 to 4 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are menstrual cycle and fertilization and implantation. Next chapter is reproductive health. We get around 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are menstrual cycle, fertilization and implantation. Coming to the next unit, we have genetics and evolution. So the chapters are principles of inheritance and variation. We get a huge amount of questions from this chapter alone, like we get 5 to 6 questions, and the important topics from this chapter are genetic disorders, deviations from Mendelism, Mendel's law of inheritance, chromosomal theory of inheritance, linkage and recombination. Coming to the next chapter, we have molecular basis of inheritance. Usually we get 4 questions from this chapter alone, and the important topics are translation, transcript, DNA structure and replication. This is very, very important, I must say, and regulation of gene expression. Next chapter is evolution. We get around 3 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are evidences of evolution and Hardy-Weinberg principle. Coming to the next unit, we have biology and human welfare. Then the chapters are human health and disease. We get around 3 to 4 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are details of immunity, allergies and autoimmunity, drugs and alcohol abuse, AIDS, human immune system. Next chapter, we have strategies for enhancement and food production. We get 2 to 3 questions from this chapter. Next chapter, we have microbes and human welfare. We get around 3 questions from this chapter. Coming to the next unit, we have biotechnology and its applications. First chapter, principles and processes of biotechnology. We usually get 2 to 3 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are tools, enzymes, vectors, process of biotech, polymerase chain reaction, restriction enzymes, main enzymes, separation and isolation of DNA fragments. Now, coming to the next chapter, we have biotechnology and its applications. We usually get 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are BT crops, interference RNA technology, other GM crops, ethical issues. And not to miss, we have mid applications in humulin. Next unit is ecology, and the chapters are organisms and populations. We get around 2 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are competition, introduction of ecology, population characters, age, structure, and migration. And not to miss, population dynamics. Next chapter is ecosystem. We usually get 2 to 3 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are ecological pyramids, mineral cycling, and ecosystem services. This is very, very important. Next, decomposition and ecosystem productivity. Next chapter we have biodiversity and conservation. We get 2 to 3 questions from this chapter, and the important topics are in situ conservation of biodiversity, ex situ conservation of biodiversity, loss of biodiversity, and magnitude of biodiversity. Next chapter is environmental issues. We get around 3 questions from this chapter. So this was all I had to offer, guys. I hope these high yielding topics help you. All the best to all the young aspiring doctors out there. Stay tuned for more.